Before we go any further, I'd just like to hand over to Councillor Purdy. You'd like to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's appropriate at this time just to have our authority record our concern for the Queen and her family. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Purdy. Right, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillors Bull, O'Brien and Councillor Wayne.
Thank you. Public participation. This is to enable members of the public to ask questions. I think we've just got the one speaker tonight, Mr. Dobbs. As usual, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, the latest NOx diffusion tube data for air pollution in Ashbourne includes a raw data reading from a building on Buxton Road of almost 76 micrograms per cubic metre. The legal limit is 40. The building is the one behind the blue HGV in the photo on the screen. So 16 months after the AQMA was declared, 3 years after it was perfectly obvious to any scientist that it should be declared, and 5 years after I started this campaign, no mitigation measures whatsoever for NOx pollution on Buxton Road have taken place. I'm deeply concerned that unless you as councillors intervene, it is possible that another 5 years will pass with no significant improvement in air quality on Buxton Road. I have circulated a document that summarises the 11 actions that I understand are in the draft action plan. I've also commented on each one to indicate its likely impact in the next 5 years on the NOx levels of that building on Buxton Road. Some of you have replied, and I thank you for your replies. I hope that you agree that there is little in the current plan that will give any confidence to Buxton Road residents that their air quality will be less harmful in the future. The part that the County Council has played in developing this plan is disappointing. You will have noted how much time was lost waiting for their decisions. The actions they have proposed are all projects that they were already carrying out. They have admitted that no additional money will be spent on the actions that they have suggested. They dismissed actions that might have worked and substituted ones that are unlikely to achieve any reduction in NOx levels at locations where they are currently highest. Is this council going to intervene to insist County Highways takes timely and effective action on air quality in Ashbourne? Or are they prepared yet again to take criticism for a problem that they did not create? So my questions are these. Is this council prepared to take instruction from members to put in place a process to amend the draft action plan so that it will be able to have a significant effect on NOx levels on Buxton Road? And question 2, will this process provide a fully transparent mechanism by which local stakeholders can make their opinions heard? And I'd like to slip in a third question of which you have not had notice. It is, however, very simple, and I'm sure either Tim or Amanda will know the answer. And question 3 is this: why was an item on the action plan not included in the agenda for this meeting? Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Dobbs. Do we have a response for those questions, Tim?
The responses to the first 2 questions are printed on the sheets on the tables in front of members.
Thank
you. I'm no expert on the rules of committee, but I can certainly try and give an answer to the third question if members are happy for me to do so. When we last had a meeting of this committee, we talked about progress on the action plan, and I said at that time that I hoped but couldn't guarantee that a report would come to this meeting with the action plan attached. And the reason I said I couldn't guarantee it is because other agencies were involved. The reasons why it hasn't come to this committee is that the Environmental Health Team is still waiting for comments from Ashbourne Town Team and Ashbourne Town Council in relation to a slightly amended version of the action plan that went out following the last Community and Environment Committee, which looked at things like 20-mile-per-hour zones, Councillor Hughes, which I know you raised. And those comments are needed to inform the committee. One of the things we're also required to do is to submit an early draft of the action plan to DEFRA ahead of any public consultation, so that I suppose, so that they know we're not consulting on something that's completely ridiculous. And we haven't had those comments back from DEFRA either. Those comments, they informed us, will take 6 weeks in total to come. The plan's been with them for 4 weeks, so we're hoping that will be with us in the next 1 to 2 weeks.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor Purdy.
Where's he gone? Oh, he's there, Mr. Dobson. Saw you there 1 moment, next minute I picked my head up, you've gone. Well, you know from my replies, Mr. Dobbs, I'm concerned about this. I'm assured that we are ahead in time frame as expected. I have, in fact, written to the leader of the Derbyshire County Council, Councillor Barry Lewis, and asked for his intervention and push on this matter. Predominantly, it is an highways issue, and that is where the answer lies, in conjunction with our own officers. So we will push.
Thank you, Councillor Purdy. Moving on, item 3, approval of minutes of previous meetings. Does that find a mover? Councillor Hobson. Councillor Morley, second. Thank you. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 4, interests. Members are required to declare the existence and nature of any interest they may have in subsequent agenda items in accordance with the District Council's Code of Conduct. Those interests are matters that relate to money or that which can be valued in money affecting the member, his, her partner, extended family and close friends. Interests that become apparent at a later stage in the proceedings may be declared at the time. Thank you. Item 5, Environmental Health Commercial Team Service Plan, Food Hygiene and Health and Safety at Work. Tim.
Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to me to introduce an environmental health report and then hand over to somebody else. It's probably time that the committee met and understood who these two people are. So on my immediate right is Amanda Goodwill, who's our environmental health manager, who has overall operational responsibility for the environmental health function. And to her right is David Cowley, we call him, who's our principal environmental health officer, who actually heads up what we call our commercial team, who deal with food safety and health and safety at work. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to them, and they're going to explain this report to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tim. Good evening, everybody. Yes, we'd like members to consider our draft service plan for the commercial team, which is one of 2 teams with environmental health, which I manage. In terms of the service plan, it focuses on the official controls that we have a duty to carry out on behalf of the local authority, which is policed by the Food Standards Agency. In terms of the plan, as introduced, we also include our health and safety activities and some other aspects of the service. Over the last 2 years, for members' information, under the COVID pandemic, we haven't had a legal duty to have a published plan, and obviously going forwards, that's come more to the fore. We've been very appreciative of that because I hope from you reading the report, we've been pretty busy. For members who are unfamiliar with this aspect of environmental health, and for those who are, I hope you found it quite an interesting read. It is my view that we've performed incredibly well under very challenging and shifting circumstances under the pandemic, with over 600 inspections taking place within food businesses and in excess of 700 requests for advice and information under health and safety. The plan details our activities under the pandemic and also what we envisage going forward, because we appreciate we're in September of the year that the plan is live. We continue to feed back to the FSA on our milestones, which we have excelled and achieved, and we also report back to them from the temperature checks that they've introduced. What I'd like to say to members as well is that we're very aware of the business community strains that they're dealing with, not only under the pandemic and the fact that they weren't able to open or open in a different guise or close altogether. It is very challenging, and my officers on the ground are very live to that matter, but also that those challenges haven't gone away in terms of staffing, in terms of that knowledge within the business, the ability to invest in the business and where their priorities lie, and that's going to come more to the fore in the autumn. I'd like to tease out just some of the aspects of the plan for members. On page 6, we talk about 3% of businesses that are 2-star or below, and there is improvement is necessary. Obviously, we'd like that to be 0, but it isn't. But I assure members that we're working very hard with those businesses with a view to them improving. But our focus is always on public health risk in terms of the actions that we take. We have noticed a decline in some businesses that perhaps have performed better in pre-pandemic, and again, we're helping them to focus their priorities going forwards. On the plus side, I would say to members, reassuringly, that 80% of our businesses, our food businesses, are good or very good, which is really positive to see. I'd also like to point out some of the improvements in the plan that we're not complacent from a service perspective, some of the things we aspire to do. We want to migrate to an Assure system, which is a cloud-based database which sits behind the service. We also aspire to streamline what we do from new business registration. At the moment, we have an ad hoc system via gov.uk and also hard copy documents coming into the organisation, and we want to streamline that in terms of an online service to be able to share that information with stakeholders in a lot more timely manner. And we also want to use our sampling activity as more of a strategic tool to inform us as to the performance of some businesses that have been struggling and improving. So we want to do that as well. So to close, I would like members to approve the plan so that we're able to publish that. But I would also like you to support our sampling approach going forwards. As a late addition to the plan, which with your approval we will add, is that we have been told we're included in a pilot with the FSA under the Levelling Up agenda in terms of nutrition in schools. So we're the only Derbyshire authority who's participating in that pilot to see how that spreads out across the country in terms of nutritional school meals for children, which will go live this month. So we're happy to take questions, but before we do, myself and Dave are alive to the fact that perhaps some of the terminology in the policy is our sort of bread and butter, so to speak, but it may not be to some elected members. So Dave's just going to pick up on just a few things around the terminology and also the risk rating prior to taking any questions. So over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Amanda. So, namely intervention, well, this can cover quite a lot of different activities, but generally the key interventions for environmental health are a full inspection, a partial inspection or an audit, and these are the activities which we work out a risk rating from. We do secondary... Oh, sorry about that. A secondary intervention, which are still official controls but are not subject to sufficient to change the risk rating, include like revisiting the site, if the full inspection identifies issues, and also sampling, surveillance, monitoring, advice and coaching. These are all interventions, but they're not sufficient to change a risk category. So an intervention has a wide meaning, but within the service plan, this generally relates to an inspection, a partial inspection or an audit. A risk category, the category determines the frequency of inspection. So an A risk should receive an inspection or an intervention every 6 months, a B risk every 12 months, and a C risk every 18 months, and a D risk would be every 2 years. An E risk category is classified as low risk, and these sites don't always need an inspection, and they can be assessed through an alternative intervention route, which is normally a self-assessment questionnaire and then a partial inspection every 3 years. So what tends to happen with those sites is that they will complete a self-assessment in, say, 1 year, then 3 years later they'll get an inspection, and then 3 years later after that they'll get an alternative intervention, so it goes in on like a rolling basis. So the score itself is based on the overall risk the site poses to the public and includes an assessment of how widely the food is provided, so whether it's locally provided, is it nationally provided, the number of people they cater for, so do they cater for a lot of people, is it a large supermarket or a smaller premises, whether they supply foodstuff to a vulnerable group, such as the elderly or the young children, and that also has an effect on the rating, and then the overall level of compliance with food hygiene regulations generally. The food hygiene rating is extracted from the overall risk score based on the level of compliance with the general hygiene regulations. And this is what we base the food hygiene rating on. The department follow all the FSA guidance when determining food hygiene ratings and risk ratings to ensure consistency and we also have to participate in I think it's something like a 6-monthly consistency exercise with the Food Standards Agency to make sure that our ratings are reflective with other organisations. That's it.
Thank you, Dave. We can obviously provide a little bit more information with the minutes if members would like to do that. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. You'll be pleased to know that my question is not complex at all. I'd like to start, if I may, just by making a very quick comment. Despite the problems and constraints that we are experiencing within the Environment Department over the nitrous oxide levels in Ashbourne, I think what this shows is that that there are areas within this department where we display diversity, breadth, real quality on the service that we actually give. So well done. And I think it was quite a delight to read the report and see exactly what we had achieved over the year. And the fact that, of course, you'd had the experience of COVID there. I wanted to pick up something actually, I think you said, that there are challenges to be faced in 22-23, but that you were thinking about, or were thinking about some sort of streamlining of efficiency. I hope it doesn't lead to any diminution in the service there, but it is an area that I'm concerned, and I'm concerned because of the whole infrastructure, if you like, of this council, and it's something that we are embarking on a detailed scrutiny and review of. So I pick up one of the things in your report in that there are, I think you say, about 30 areas or establishments where there is improvement necessary, and it may entitle revisits. Do you, or perhaps to you, Tim, through you, do you feel that you have adequate resources and staffing for this coming year to handle those, or just coming back to what I've just said about streamlining, do you feel that there are certain things that we need to put in place to allow us to properly maintain the level of service that we have done over the period of this report? So it's really all about resources and staffing, because I know that you utilise quite a lot of part-time staff.
Yeah, we try to be as innovative as we can be, and I think Dave touched on the categories of premises from A to E, and the level of effort that is needed with those premises is slightly different because there isn't the same risk in terms of their activity. So we do target it to the top end in terms of the A to C premises. But if you recall, under the pandemic, the local authority was able to draw down some monies from the county in terms of that regulatory effort. And we've also, in terms of resilience and, looking at the service going forwards, took the view that we would employ graduates on a temporary contract, not only in terms of experience, but also to pick up those lower risk premises and give them some really good experience. And that's been fantastic, not only in terms of for the food service and some of the challenges there and the low risk ones that they can cut their teeth on, but also with the Homes for Ukraine situation, lots of different things we've been able to turn our hands to. So that's been really good, and I think something we're going to review going forwards as to whether that's something we want to try and sustain. Certainly in terms of just giving people a flavour of Derbyshire Dales and a rural authority and lots of experience across the board. But in terms of just food, it is always pushed by risk, and we do what we can with businesses. And yes, we do have challenges that knock us sideways a little bit, but we do try to refocus as the opportunity takes us. So we're trying to do things in that way, and we're able to, in terms of the establishment, retain what we have at the present time. But you know, it's always a little bit of a challenge.
Well done. Keep the good work going.
Thank you.
Councillor Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. Can I first of all thank Amanda and Dave for their presentations to us this evening. Very clear, I think, but I think some of the technical stuff does need further explanation, perhaps, if we can do that through the minutes. But I think given the present financial situation, especially facing owners and managers of pubs and restaurants and cafes and takeaway food establishments, for instance, do officers anticipate increasingly severe problems in terms of food hygiene standards during their inspections, when perhaps some of these premises or businesses are making redundancies because of the increasing problems of viability of their businesses. So I think it's almost inevitable that people are going to be losing jobs and they'll be trying to exist on a lower staffing ratio.
Yeah, all I was going to say on that, Councillor, is we have had a few issues with a few premises which have been really poor standards due to cleanliness and things like that, when they've previously been very good. And some of the reasons for that has been down to staffing levels. They've been saying that rather than close at 8 o'clock and clean the premises, they might carry on trading until 10 o'clock, and rather than spending time cleaning the premises. And yeah, it's like you say, it's sometimes if the premises is so bad with the cleanliness, you have to intervene. You can't ignore those types of issues, and that's where the risk rating comes in, where we've had quite a few premises which have gone from a 5 to a 2 or a 4 to a 2 rated premises improvement necessary, and that's generally been down to issues like cleanliness. And we've had a few issues with businesses altering the layout internally due to COVID and not necessarily thinking about safety when they're doing that. They've thought more about the display of the food stuff rather than like personal hygiene and safety of the food stuff. So with those businesses, we've generally given them advice about what they can do in a safe way to make sure that they're operating in a safe way, basically in that way. Do you want to come in there, Amanda, or?
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to thank you for the excellent report and the information it contains, and also for explaining some of the technical terms. I've got one follow-up question on that, and that was: is there anything that we should be aware of about the outstanding interventions in the D&E category? So, is this an issue, or is it standard, normal? I think that's it, really.
Yeah, I think in terms of the numbers, you initially look at it and think it's a bit alarming, don't you? But in terms of the risk rating, they are very much at the lower end in terms of maybe people who generate some food at home because they're trying their hand at that side of things. So that is governed by risk. The key for us is to actually deal with the new food registrations and understand what people aspire to do and what their knowledge and expertise is. But in terms of the D&E, I'm comfortable with that in terms of the numbers. We've been on top of it in terms of the A to Cs, which is where the greatest reaches and the greatest issues potentially are. So we're very much been on target with that in terms of the milestones from the FSA, so I'm really comfortable with that. As Dave explained, in terms of the category E's, which is probably the higher number in the report, that can capture somebody who makes jam at home to somebody who does, celebration cakes for a few friends and thinks it's a good idea to do a little bit more, which is, there's all sorts of combinations, or it could be that it's just wrapped food in a particular premises where it isn't particularly a food premises. But they have a few sweets that are wrapped and bought from elsewhere. So I wouldn't be too alarmed by that. It is the nature, they're at ease for a reason. Obviously, premises can change, and they have changed under COVID, where maybe they did one thing pre-COVID and think, well, takeaway was pretty good under COVID, so I'm going to go that way. We're very alive to that matter as well. and where we have that intelligence, we do act on it accordingly. So it is a little bit a movable feast, but we do respond to that. And I think in terms of where we are at the moment, it's pretty good in terms of what we've achieved. So yeah, the challenges are still there, but we do have a really good rapport with businesses, and you know, they do get in touch when they want to, you know, discuss matters. So I would take some comfort from that as well. We do offer free advice to businesses, so that is something that we also do.
Thank you. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you. Add my thanks as well, Amanda and David, but I think there's a few points I'd like to just raise, if I may. I mean, I've highlighted in this council a number of times the low or the shortage of staff in departments, and I last month actually raised this at the East Midlands councils, and every leader at that meeting from the East Midlands echoed the same concern, and it's a real national concern. So we are really, I think, as one of the members there put it, walking into a crisis. So I thank the staff because especially I know the fact that you're under such pressure trying to jiggle so many plates, and that's been added to by the pandemic, so we take our hat off to you. Some small points. I know that one time there used to be sort of a notice on the door as to the hygiene quality. That's still there, isn't it? Can I add the others in that manner? I'll come back to it. It's only quick ones. So I'm sure that's there. Have we ever thought about an apprentice scheme to help with staffing? And the food to door delivery concerns me because there must be lots of premises where this food's being made, picked up and then delivered to somebody else's door. How do we keep a check on that? Is there a lot of food industry under the radar, for example? And by the way, I'm pleased to hear about the pilot scheme. That's good news for us.
I'll pick off some of those, and then Dave, if you want to jump in on some of those as well. The Food Hygiene Rating Scheme, which is the green sticker on the door, yes, that is very much in place, and that's the public-facing, you know, sort of score that people see on the premises. So that is very much alive, and that is something that we update to the national portal on a very regular basis, and that's what the food business operator is really striving for in terms of a 5. And if it falls below that, obviously the power of social media and everything else and local publicity, it is not something they want to attract. So they're very keen to remedy that as soon as they possibly can, and we try and help them to do that. In terms of the apprenticeship, yes, certainly training standards colleagues at the county, together with other persons and also the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health, have looked to delivering an apprenticeship scheme. It isn't something that we have actively looked at this time because our staffing need has been around a competency that is there and is ready to go. As a service, certainly since I've been at the local authority, we've had the benefit of some very long and serving staff who are very experienced. That will change, and we're sort of going into that territory at the moment. You know, it is something that will be on our radar. I'm pleased to say that we were able to secure the graduate post, which isn't something we've done in recent times, and that has really played out in a really positive way. So I'm very happy with that as a model. The apprentice scheme is there. In some respects, that is a more longer-term plan in terms of committing to that. I think we can review that again in time, but I think coming out of the pandemic, it's wrestling with these numbers and milestones and getting back on track that I think is really important. And that just gives it a bit more of a boost a bit quicker than anything down that scale, but I take your point in terms of that. The sort of dark kitchens or the sort of delivery of food, I don't know whether you want to pick up on that, Dave.
Yeah, all I was going to say on that is that the Food Standards Agency have got a national priority on that because they're looking at like Facebook and Deliveroo, and it is very much a concern for a number of local authorities up and down the country, particularly more larger cities where anybody could advertise anything on Facebook. And that is an area of work which the FSA are looking into. But they're looking at it more with the Facebook directly rather than individuals, if you see what I mean. So they're going for the like Deliveroo's. They're trying to get a working charter with, I think it's Deliveroo, Uber, and there is a third one, but I can't remember what the name is. And
Sorry to interrupt. Are you saying it's unregulated at the moment?
no, it's not unregulated, but the charter they're trying to get with the charter they're trying to get with Deliveroo would be a standard where a food business would have to be registered with a local authority. They'd have to have a minimum hygiene rating of 3 before they would be allowed on the scheme. With home baking and Facebook, it is regulated. It's just a case of establishing where those premises are.
Thank you. Councillor Buttle.
Thank you, Tim, Amanda and Dave. I don't know if I'm speaking close enough to this. I seem to remember we had some sort of informal or formal request through this committee a while back to the Environmental Health about the use of glyphosate by our contractors, by the public, and in the district. And
Chair, may I
was
interrupt?
wondering if
Yes, I was just going
I'm sorry,
to
I
say
just got a
I need
news
to adjourn
flash.
the meeting for a minute.
Yeah, I think we should for a moment. The Queen has passed away.
right, in that case, put it on hold.
Shall we adjourn for 5 minutes, Chair? May I suggest? Thank you. Yeah. People have their own individual thoughts, but I think it's appropriate we just take a recess 5 minutes. Okay.
carry on to the end of this item, and then I'm going to have to adjourn the meeting. So, Councillor Ratcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. All I wanted to do was just to move that last item, because I think it's obviously deserving of this unanimous support I know it's going to get. So just we move that item and adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe. Councillor Hobson. And just very quickly, I missed Councillor Finesse. He's got a quick question.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Amanda and Dave. I would certainly second the motion that has been done. Just a quick question for me. The samples which we collect, do we deal with them ourselves or pass them on?
The samples are collected by food safety officers and then they're sent on to the lab at York, which is the UK Health Security Agency lab. We've only got 4 labs in the UK, and York is the nearest one for us, really.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour? I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, well, I'm afraid we're going to have to adjourn the meeting because of the sad news of the Queen's passing, so I'm sure we all send our condolences. Thank you, everyone.